Welcome to an episode of Money in the Bank with Frank. We have Matt Rossiter with us. Matt and I go back a ways to CFP school back in New York City. Can't wait to talk to you a little bit about the progression of full service brokerage over to independent status and things that he's up to. But we'll get to that after the notes now. Welcome, Matt. So good to see you again. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Welcome back to Dallas. Of course, you were here for so long, and then you left, and then literally we have not had any weather whatsoever for the foreseeable past, and then you get it. You get it all in one day.
It has not stopped raining. I just want to clear my hair. It would be much better off if it wasn't for that. I mean, just saying.
That's great.
That's I'm thank God I'm not that sweet. Otherwise, I'd melt, right?
Oh my goodness! Exactly. So, why don't you just start off with how we met originally, if you remember the
I do remember. It was a plane, dude. We were on a plane next to each other, and as we all know, you don't talk to anyone, no strangers whatsoever, and not too dissimilar to myself. I can't. Were you coming back here to see your mom? Maybe.
I think so. Yeah, I think I might have been.
Yeah, and I know you longer than I know my wife. I'm not kidding. There's only a handful of people I could say in this business that are in that same spot. But start a conversation. You were doing something I wasn't doing. I was an advisor early in my stages of my career, and at the end of the day, it was happenstance. We stayed connected. I guess in some ways thanks to LinkedIn connecting the dot, and just something happened in your world, you'd say something to me. Something happened in my world, I'd say something to you. And next thing you know, we crossed paths for a little bit.
Yeah.
And here we are, crossing paths live and in person.
Yeah, it's interesting because, people feel like they get stuck into a specific rut in life, right? You start off, you get out of college, maybe you start off in a job because it was available and you needed the money. And then you feel like you're stuck in this progression, regardless of whether it's even in the same industry. In our industry, right, you start off for me, I started off on the phones with Fidelity, and I was doing like mutual fund sales. And then from sales, I was able to transfer up to retail at a branch office up in New York City. And then from New York City as a retail guy, I ended up doing something that really wasn't happening back then. This is like 1999. I flipped over to I did a little venture capital private equity, and then didn't like it. Found out really quickly that I am a retail guy. I like talking to individuals and plan sponsors. I don't like talking institutionally about finance. But that's, I actually did something that most people don't do, which is like jump from one side to the other, right?
Very true. You're absolutely right. That this business is just that, right? You're pigeonholed, and then you get deeper and deeper, and you get more and more specialized and less of the things that you really should be to a client or your practice or your person. And I agree with that piece. It's interesting. But
yeah, and so I feel like you kind of made a jump too, because you've never stayed in the same lane.
No, you're right. So I was in the same lane for a number of years. Right out of college, went into what is now known as Ameriprise. Started my own business, which was really just phone call.
Smiling and dialing.
A little stack of leads. They're all new. What's that 1980 down the bottom written? It's okay. They're
Don't
new.
worry about it. They're new to you.
They're new to you is right. They're warm. I know we just printed them. You're good. Progressed into where the good news where they were, when Ameriprise was, they do have a good job of segregating that business where you're an employee. You don't need to know everything. The thing that matters the most is talking to people and getting them on board with the mission, to then progressing over to, if you chose to go the franchise model, to run your own business.
Right.
And I did that. And then I tried to launch my own individual at the time where there was no real decent partner to go truly independent. And, and I'm not going to say I was ahead of the curve. I was behind the curve. It's just the same time I just wasn't aware of the curve that even existed.
It's funny you should say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, that's what it feels like, right? It's like, oh, you're going independent. All right, I'm going to go to TD. I was like, okay, great. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? wait, I have all the things available to me. And oh, by the way, you have all the things you have to do. And ultimately, personally, I end up ultimately failing as a business owner. I didn't fail as an advisor. I failed as a business owner. And it's because of that, I chose to sell the practice. And then I got an executive recruiting and then got sucked back into this industry, recruiting advisors and all the things that go along with it. But it's an interesting conversation. And why I'm here a few minutes late is because I was having a conversation with a guy who is having the same inroads. He doesn't even know what's next.
See, that's what's fascinating about what's going on. And what I am helping a client right now who, at the stages of life, people pass away, parents pass away. And so I'm helping a physician who had passed away. We're trying to figure out all the little intricacies. And what I've learned just in the brief conversation with his former office manager, it's the same in every industry. Like when you get out of medical school, they taught you how to be a doctor. They didn't teach you how to run payroll.
You're not a business owner.
Right. And so how do you just start out where you're just a brand new business owner, but you know everything about your industry, but you don't know about, do I have to do a franchise tax return? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? Do I have to do payroll? It's
What
do you mean
should I be structured as an LLC? LLC is a partnership or LLC is an S corp? Am I allowed to have flow into the LLC? Am I allowed to have flow into am I have to go to my personal?
Right.
There's so many, to your point, intricacies are great. Right? There is so many nuances, and there's not very many places out there that I'll say take the building blocks and help you build it. And that's where I was at that space, which as a business owner, I was like, I went out and it was like, the answer was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to figure that out. Like, too late. I'm who's first, who's last? I can't.
Right.
And
so what was interesting is like, back in the formative years of financial advice, if you worked for a big firm, right, which was unheard of to get a job with one of the bigger firms, you had to know somebody. It was almost impossible to get a job in finance, right? You had to know somebody who knew somebody, or you had to get really lucky, right? And once you had a coveted job at a big firm that had a great name, people don't know you; they knew your company.
Yeah, you're selling the company,
right? You're
selling the institution, and the reality is, and actually, this is so funny. We're having this conversation, the timing, because what I just left the convo was just this. And the question mark was, what do I do today to position myself to walk away from this institution that I'm being told I'm supposed to be selling? And the answer is, do you know everything about your clients? Do you know their middle name, their kids' kids, their dogs' names? Do you know what matters to them and how to move the needle as a true advisor? Okay, that's the half part. All the advisors do that. Do your clients know your kids' names? Do they know when your birthdays are? You should have this. No matter what that name is on the card, it doesn't matter. That's how you move from where you are.
I like
that
that.
institution.
I like that. For me, I've always thought of it as, most people say that, your advisor, your financial advisor, it's just a guy that you talk to on a regular basis, but you don't go on vacations with them. It's like, I've done all of that with all of my clients, and I have been part of their family. And so for me, it's a little easier to be able to do that as an independent. But when I was at the bigger firms, you're not allowed because the firm wants to own it. And back then it was also like, as an advisor that was doing okay, you're always afraid. You're always afraid to leave, right?
Don't knock that apple cart over.
And you don't know that there are so many other things that you could be doing to better help your clients because you don't know, and you're never going to know until you do leave. And that's scary.
It's funny you say it like that because, you and I had this a version of this conversation a few days ago, and it was a reminder that this business went from the best place to be is what I call the big box stores. Everyone knows the names. We don't need to say them. At the end of the day, the big box stores, that was the draw. That's what we're talking about. So then advisors realized, those who figured it out go, the real relationship's me. And the real relationship is, I've got this practice. I think I have a business. I'm going to go do this myself. And there's got to be a way to do it, right? And then there was groups that came out, and then from an industry standpoint, the acronym IBD, Independent Broker Dealers, started to land. And that was the best landing spot. And they did a great job for a long time. being the best spot to land at, to feel independent, to have your own entity, have your own DBA, to have ensemble versus somebody else, right? And it allowed you to really build this brand. But the reality was, ironically, they still were captive.
Yeah, they still recapture you one way or the other.
You still were attached, and you couldn't detach unless you full-blown ripped out. And that phrase, those who know it, know it. But the actual true independent world is the RA space, where you're attached and you're not beholden to one master. You have partnerships that help you move the needle with the business. You have partnerships that help you clear the business, fidelity, all the custodies, right? You have, do I do business, broker-dealer business? Do I not? Do I do commissions? Do I do insurance? As a true independent business owner, you have the first time now, and it's been happening a long time, but it's starting to become a daily, that's the space to be. The interesting part is this pendulum started swinging, right?
Now it's starting to swing.
And all of a sudden, there's
way,
private equity coming in going, wow, this is a pretty good business. We're going to give some money. Let's make you bigger. The independents, the aggregators, those who have been collecting and grabbing people to attach to help them run their business, they've taken, and not they across the board, a lot of them have done that and taken money, and then next thing you know is the parent company, the private equity, are going to have to sell. And what are we 5 years from now? It's going to look like the big box stores again.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing. I think that there's a pretty interesting correlation to what happened and how it moved and how it's going to move back a little bit. And that all starts with, let's say that you're a good financial advisor entrenched in a firm, big firm, any firm, XYZ firm, where it's not you, they're going to argue it's them, right? Even though it's you.
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah.
So you decide you want to let go of the peanut and you're going to go independent, and you decide that I want to go off on my own. I'm going to start it on my own. So now you have a couple of decisions to make. You got to figure out whether or not you want to go to an RIA or a hybrid broker dealer, right? And let's assume that you decide you want to do the hybrid and you want to have both. You want to keep your registration with FINRA and you want to be an independent as an RIA. Which of those do I choose? Which of those gives me the most opportunities to bring the clients that I have? Because let's say that you're going to keep some of the clients that you didn't expect that would come with you, and you're not going to bring over the ones that you're so blown away about.
Your best friends, and you're like, how? You're right. It's a bell curve.
Yeah.
And the irony is, if you do it right, you're going to bring more over than the 76% of a bell curve. You're going to be closer to the 90. But reality is that little difference, that little nut that's different, it's going to be the same percentage. But you're right. It's going to be people that you like. I said something to them. I didn't think they were coming. I figured I'd just throw it out. They were the first person that said, where do I sign?
Right.
No clue how valuable I was to them. Right. That's actually how they should be looked at. Yeah. Then you've got your best friend, or worse, right? Your parents. Like, they're coming. I just want to see if you're going to do this okay. Let's see if you're going to be successful.
Well, they're just comfortable where they are, right? They know. Tested. Who knows? Whatever reason, those people show up or they don't know. Now, let's take the next step. Here's the real choice, right? It's like, can you do it again? Right? You choose the wrong home.
Yeah, and there's the rip out part.
Now you're screwed. Now you're really scared, right? You got to figure out whether or not you're going to. You got to figure out whether you're going to stay at that bad situation or if you were going to try it again. So, repapering is never fun. So you have to do your research ahead of time. And here's the reason it's really important. It's like, if you go to a firm that actually clears through one of the major custodians, whether it's NFS or
IWS, Pershing, Schwab, the big boys that are in that space, that you truly are allowable to leave in and out, and then there's a higher fire form, and there's no actual full-blown repapering. Right. And it makes a big difference in that space. And those who do it right, and I don't just mean the advisor, the firms that are aggregating, and an aggregating meaning come over, have your name, whatever, right, and all the different places, those who do it right allow the advisor the autonomy of landing at a spot like that.
Right.
Which opens the gates to, we have to keep, as a firm, keep providing value.
That's right. which is great. Here's the negative part of it. The negative part is that, as you know, because there's just limited amount of time and limited resources, but unbelievable technology, you start to develop scale again. As an independent, I own my own book, but I clear through one of these custodians. If I clear through one of these custodians, and do I now belong to that custodian? Because what if I don't have enough assets under management to leave this custodian because I don't like them and move over to another one?
Yeah,
right?
and
so that's why you're really still kind of captured. You're still
there's
really
some truth
still
to
captured,
that.
you know?
And that, to your point, you do have to do due diligence about the custodial relationship, and if you are at the right one. Nowadays, most of them, the exception of one or two, you can be at the right one and disconnect and reconnect, or disconnect and launch your own. And as we all, and those who know it, right, you could technically still launch your own RIA at 60 million. That's below but that's state run. You're state registered.
Yeah.
Different, less risk level, different interesting piece. There's different nuances associated with that. Break the 100 million. Okay, now I can go to the big boy league, and that may not be the right spot though.
Yeah. Here's what's fascinating. I want to tie this as a corollary to an industry that we're adjacent to. I'm very deep into it now. But
yes, and we're about to go on more of a frank convo here because I am dangerous if I open my mouth too much. So.
No, this is where I want to see whether you tie together the same things that I'm seeing, the same correlations. So let's start off with back in the day, it was a lot easier at TD. I was able to go, this is back whenever I cleared through TD only before they got bought out by Schwab. I had 7 million and they took me as an advisor under management. And now Schwab or Fidelity won't touch you unless you have 50, maybe more, right? Before you'd even come on their platform.
It's all about profitability. It's all about profitability at the end. And as a business owner, it should be at the end of the day, because in order to keep going the next year, you have to have profit to keep going the next. I get it.
Yeah. But what was the thing that happened to allow all those independents to go free? And the thing is that we had technology that we never realized, as an independent, I was like, why do I have to work behind this? Why do I have to come here to this office, commute and do this stuff when I could literally just do the same thing in my house, right?
Yeah.
And then you realize the technology did exist. And
and it has existed a lot. And now the fintech space is stupid. It has been stupid for years. And it's only getting one thing better.
Better, but also more convoluted because they have too many of them.
Yep.
And do too much.
And one does you go like, well, this one does this. I want to do something that does both. Okay, there's these, maybe these. No, wait, no. This one does. Oh, wait, no. This one does this. There's no.
They want that opacity. Yeah, like I have portfolio monitoring software that I've had since the beginning because again, when you're a small money manager, you can only afford the smaller, less expensive versions. But if you're on that platform for a period of time, every dividend, every capital gain, every transaction, in order to transfer your performance from one vendor to another, you either have to literally manually input every dividend, every capital gain, every reimburse, whatever, or your performance is off.
Yeah. And you do it one T not crossed right.
All of them. So I think to some degree that's also planned obsolescence. They want you to stay. Right.
There's a lot of truth to that. And the only solution,
because everything in our business is annuitized. Right?
Yeah.
Even our vendors.
Oh, heavens, yes, right? Your contracts and your subscriptions and all the other things. The other side piece of that is, at the end of the day, I'm dumb it down to the simplest one. I can take this back to managers I worked with when I was originally, the best solution to any of this is a new client. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters the most is the end client and you're having a conversation. If you get stuck in the weeds, you may not be able to keep going. I'm disconnecting from our world. I've used this analogy through all of my life as an advisor as a husband. I don't get away with much with my wife, but she's from Jersey. Anyone's up north, But the other side of that is I do it with my son. I do it with my work. I do it with it. Life is like a car driving down the highway. You're driving in your car. Just did it. What's the one place you look more than any other?
Front.
You sure as hell better be. My favorite is, well, everyone thinks it's a trick question. It's not.
Right.
Windshield, the dashboard, make sure the car's working. Side mirrors, don't get sideswiped. I got the insurance on the car rental coming into Dallas. I knew better. I'm like, just in case, right?
Yeah.
But that analogy is all functional pieces, but not only of the business, our industry, our relationships. It's also, you're probably about to go down that adjacent life. It's very similar. It's that, how do things move forward? How do things keep getting, I'll say, better, maybe more efficient, maybe more effective, more scalable, more opportunities. There's a lot of spaces out there that are seeing some of that. I know as fintech, similar aspect in the industries. I think I might be teeing you up. I don't know if I am.
No, yes. Well, so, okay, I've obviously moved into the employee benefit space because, as we've discussed in the past, I think the thing that happened back in late 1999, 1998, basically 1998, 1999 was, prior to the dot-com bubble and then deflation, was that we had all this interesting technology that came out, which was to say that decimalization of trading. We had, you didn't have to call your broker to hit the button to sell something.
To write a piece of paper to put it in a tube that goes down.
Yeah. Once that happened and we had transparency and we were able to actually place the trade online ourselves, you got rid of a lot of the reason and the necessity for all that bloat in the financial services industry. And it made it a lot easier for us sales guys, right? Financial advisors that were working for firms prior to, by the way, actually learning something and knowing what you're doing. When you were just a sales guy, but you thought you knew everything and you went independent, which was where the opportunity was, because you didn't know what you didn't know unless you were willing to give it a shot, was that there was all the technology in the world you needed. And that's happening right now in the employee benefit space, which has been historically run by a handful of employee benefit companies like Marsh McLennan, USI, Lockton Dunning, some these big, huge,
they're monsters, and
huge brokerages that are not stock brokerages typically thought of, and they have a huge a huge opaque market. Like their supply chain for health insurance is out of control, and I don't think that the actual brokers know how much their companies are taking, and there's been some lawsuits that have come out recently that are very parallel to the 401k market, the 401k space. And it was after that you saw a lot of people go independent. And I think you're about to see the same thing happen on the employee benefit space that we saw back in the 2010s, 2012s, when you saw a mass exodus of people going from big full service firms to independent.
Again, my big box store to the independent space. And which lends itself to, you have 2 decades of independence that are about to, that pendulum swinging in that space, and there's opportunity there. If it correlates, assuming it does, based on that analogy, it's interesting.
Yeah. So give us an example of, or just tell me basically, what was it that you wish when you first became a business owner? What was it that you wish you knew up front? What was the first thing that you were like, other than coming up with a name? I always thought that coming up with the name was the hardest thing to do. It was so brutal.
I get it. So it's funny is I think there's multiple, again, I'll use foundation blocks or building blocks. There's your branding and marketing. That's what you described, right? And nowadays you have to have at least a bare minimum of a postage stamp on the internet. It doesn't mean you have to have everything to go there. And those who really get it know I don't need more than validation. 2, the color, the scheme, the brand, the logo, all the things that go along with that branding and marketing. Sidestep that. Then there's the actual behind the scenes business aspect. I don't mean you're paying for the lights. Everyone knows rent's rent, right? You got to pay the bills.
I can do this. Prove it. What's going to be the back office?
It really is.
Yeah.
Should I be running as a sole proprietor? Should I be running as an LLC. LLC is a partnership. LLC is a S corp. Who's going to help me with this? Who's paying my business? Oh, it's me. So if you were to ask me, where did I fail? Essentially, is a good way of asking that. Terrible negative association, but at the end of the day, it's reality, and that's what
we call it experience.
Yes, thank you. That's the gray, by the way.
We call it experience.
And the big picture is, it's the entity, it's the solution, it's the finding a good partner who can do that piece at scale and cost effectively, especially early. I'll tell you the biggest thing that I see, the biggest failures in this business, not necessarily me, is those who get over their skis and create too many expenses right out of the gate. And right now, the biggest bloat, there's two: real estate and personnel. Personnel is generally worth the money. Real estate isn't. Why? What's it for?
Well, keep in mind, though, prior to COVID, the securities industry had zero interest in letting you have a home office.
And I 100% agree with you. I was going to say, yes, all this triggered based on the forced not allowed to be amongst the other animals. But now we're all individually in cages, so to speak, at home. And at the same time, that trigger, that COVID, that functional piece, that did shift the needle. And it absolutely helped our business.
Yeah.
I personally think it allowed more people the freedom to say that, not that I thought I had to pay. I don't have to.
Yeah.
I could be a Regis. It could be where, what are we at right now? What's the,
this is a shared space, but it's
a
like,
great, no, not too dissimilar, right?
Yep.
The best places are those who leverage that space and say, I don't need to be in here. My best people I go meet with.
Yeah. And let's be honest. When it comes to working with people, you want to go to their home or their office, preferably their home, because that's where all the records are.
Remember the thing I said? What's the one thing that matters most for if you want to move? You know everything about them. More importantly, they know everything about you. Best way to find that? Sitting across their coffee table. You see that picture over there. Why do you have a picture of that college? I know you didn't go there. My niece went there. Actually, there's a niece, but by its definition, but we actually raised her. Huh? Wow. Tell me about that. You now have something that no one else can have. That old go to the doctor, in the in-house doctor, it's real. It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's come back.
And it's also like, really, like, as I said, you get not only a color from what they like, what they don't like, but you also have access to their files, right? You need to find out what their life insurance is, their health insurance, all that stuff.
Go to the filing cabinet.
You get them in your office and you ask them, and you're across the table.
They come over with that stuff and they're like, I don't know.
I don't know if I brought it. I didn't bring it off to get it back to you. And then what do we need the most to make the right decisions or help them with the right decisions? We need the data, right? We always need the data.
Good data in,
How do you get the data? How do you get the good data?
The actual.
Got to be there. You got to get.
Yeah, and the only downside of that is it's not scalable in the big grand scheme of things. So you have to validate what do you want as a business, and how do you build that business to accommodate those things. That's the other side. Some advisors love the idea of scalability and building their brand that may turn into a franchise version of a model, and that may not be as scalable for them. But there still has to be a physical connectivity that must occur, and more importantly, in their environment. Simply opinion, but
yeah. So tell me what, we got into a discussion about financial services and making the decisions on it. Tell us about yourself. Where you at? What do you do?
Yeah. So, I am Matt Rossiter, Senior Vice President of Business Development for Aspire Investment Partners, $4.5 billion hybrid. We have both broker-dealer and an RIA. We're multi-custodian. Our main headquarters is out of McLean, Virginia, which is across the river from the D.C. About 50 teams across the country. I think we're about 80 plus or so individual producing advisors. And it's fun because I have what I call a long runway of communicating with advisors depending on where they're at in their business. And I've had versions of that in my past, and they've been very good. And again, my job being to recruit or at least connect and talk about ways to grow individual practices. And it allows me back to our conversation about the industry, to help people with different layers of what they do. And sometimes we're the right fit, sometimes we're not, and that's okay.
You see, what's fascinating is that you've actually been in the seat and you realize how your experience led you to teach other advisors what not to do.
Oh, yeah. And that's what drew me back into this, from a recruiting standpoint, it drew me back into the seat of being a recruiter for this space. Not only do I know the words, I know the acronym, I know what it feels like, but man, I freaking failed at it. And I failed in a way that wasn't catastrophic, but in a way that to this day I look back and go, boy, if I had what we have as the industry now available as a launching point to go independent, I never would have been in that position.
Right.
Heck, I'd be taller and better. I might be as tall as you by this time if that was the case. Better looking, that's a whole different bag. But at the same time, my point being is it's the space that now independence isn't some, oh, they're going independent. No. Independence is where you should go. And independence allows you that ability to have it so much easier at your fingertips. So, and that's the intentionality is one of my conversations the last couple of days was about where we are in our life. I'm too old to waste time. That's terrible. It could be perceived negatively. What I mean by it is I look for good people. It's that simple. Most things can be learned. And I'm not just talking about advisors, and you've got to, and I focus on successful advisors, but at the end of the day, it's how do I find good people who are trying to do the right thing? And they've either outgrown, I outgrew my jacket. Yeah, that's a weight issue. But at the end of the day is I outgrew this, I outgrew the platform, I outgrew the whatever it may be. That's time to have conversations.
So you're bringing me up on a different a part that I thought was pretty interesting as well. So I've seen many different models and different hybrids and different practices build and scale their own way. The benefit there is that it's your practice. You can do whatever you want, right? And that goes across any industry. But in ours particularly, one that I've seen over and over again is you've got two-minded people. You've got, I want to build my own practice for me, myself, and maybe I will sell it someday. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll give it to an heir. Maybe I'll sell it. Who knows? Or you have people that want a platform, right? Teams that are like, okay, we're going to go out there and aggregate like Spire, right? Yeah. It sounds like they started off, but they built, in the very beginning, they made the decision that they wanted to build the bones and build the platform model.
Yep.
And that usually takes either a partnership with a couple of people that actually have the money to do it, or somebody who pretty wealthy that was able to, build that platform, because that's not cheap. When you look at your startup costs for a financial services firm, you've got bare bones costs. You've got to have your technology, right? You have to have your computer,
technology,
but then
personnel.
You're going to need portfolio monitoring software. You're going to need obviously you're going to need a custodian.
You need surveillance. You need compliance. You need in our space that's a
compliance, right?
Compliance. And then the intention behind compliance is some of the best things it could ever have. It goes awry is when it gets unfortunate sometimes. You're right. The unique thing is how we were built originally started with if we were to just build this just for us, what do we want this to look like? I find that's the most successful. If I could just get these things put together, what would it look like? Okay, great. Now I've done it. And then you have
to focus on those clients that are going to sit in that box.
Yep. And then this goes back to this. You don't have to chase anymore. You attract. Because what you built is attractive, because those are the things I wanted too. What are you doing over there? Same thing with client. It's no different. Advisor and client, the exact same conversation. What are you doing over there, and why can I not be a part of that? And nowadays there's more and more of that. Obviously, more options, more. The world's getting crazier with the private equity and how that's going to shift the needle and the pendulum. It's going to move the pendulum, and it already is. The writing of the checks, it's just different versions now. People jumping just to make their.
Well, you're seeing
that's a it's a 4-letter word to me. I just think it's because they're making the wrong decision. They're not necessarily making a decision for their client. They're actually just making a decision to put some money in their bank.
Right, but you can see that. I mean, private equity does that to anything that they can monetize, right? They did it with they did it with all the hospitals and all the healthcare systems, right? It got to the point where if you're the first person that they buy, you're winning. If you're the last person before they actually, then they don't care. They don't. Oh, you don't want to accept XYZ's insurance.
Too bad.
You service 36 people a week. We don't care.
Yep.
Right.
No, but to that end, I don't want, and this goes back to this. I do not want to say that just because I talked about people taking checks is a bad thing. At the end of the day, it's a reality, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, especially when the business or the way you did things that's the way you did things. Like that was the only way you moved ahead, was to take those things. It takes somebody, cash or capital, to say, I don't need that. I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to buck the system. I'm going to be private. I'm going to be separate of that piece. And this is why. And by the way, that's interchangeable on any business line.
Yeah. Critical moment is whenever you have to recognize that the kind of client that you want to service. I had a really great conversation yesterday with a new advisor that came on our platform, and he asked me, there's a client that wants to work with me. They're very nice, but I think they're going to be challenging. They don't do things the way that I do it. What should I do? And I said, just leave it. I said, your life is going to be complicated enough with the clients that you do service the way that you like to service. If you get out of that lane with that client that's going to be problematic, you're just going to be unhappy, and it's not going to be worth that.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said about truly appreciating. There was a couple, I've been at a couple firms in my history, and one place from a leadership standpoint they harped on, and I, at first I was like, wow, we're just talking. No, it was a great line. Know who your ideal client is. And that line is how it was delivered. And I think it's been changed in my perception. And anyone who knows me knows I have no original thought. Everything I was grabbed from somebody else. I may have repackaged it and put something out. And this is an example. I hear that and I think, know who your ideal client is, but also know who the person you'll never want to work with. You have to say no.
Your non-negotiables, right?
The non-starters, baby.
Yeah.
We done.
Yeah.
I want to do my own trades. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So did you know that you can get a retail Schwab pretty easily, or TD? Now, not Schwab, but now Fidelity. You can go do that yourself. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm not going to tell you where to go, but I'm pretty sure Google will tell you.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's okay not to be there. It's okay not to be good for everybody.
Right.
It makes you better.
Yeah. And you can see this correlation on a lot of different things. Have you ever worked with somebody who is highly skilled at something, and you ask him to do something super basic, and you just watch them struggle a little bit? It's like, why would they have even decided to do that other than a relationship? It's like you need to know what tools to use, and when you go to someone that's very experienced, as a lot of years in the industry, maybe if you say that I want you to call me before I do a trade, if you're that professional, hopefully you have the capacity to say, I only work discretionarily, or you're better off at that other place, because neither one of you are going to be happy.
It's like dating.
It's like dating.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And early in the business, when you're trying to start from zero, it's tough to say no to somebody. At the same token, you don't realize how much time you've given back if you say no to the right no. Because it's the old 80-20 rule. They may make you some money, but associated with your time. There's 80-20 on profit margin on the pain in the butts, and then there's your time margin in your life. And the one thing all of us have is the exact same thing, which is everyone has the exact same amount of time on it every single day.
Yeah.
By the way, again, back to my bad joke. If I figured out a way to fix that, I'd be taller and better looking. It's unrelated, but related.
Great. I just cannot believe the sound of the rain. Sohail, do something about that. I'm just joking. What
sounds nice.
I know it's.
I was going to nod off a little bit. Thank God that we're talking. It'd be just like
Sohail. So luckily, Sohail has been the beneficiary of some advice that I've given him in the past. And I actually just had a conversation with Jen in the other room, who actually just bought a car and hammered with the negotiation because, again, he's never done it before. He just got the experience, and that experience was uncomfortable experience. Like, they kept the keys, and so he couldn't leave, and so he just signed the paperwork so that he could get out of there, and they hammered him on the interest rate, right? So he got experience, and he told me that story and shared that with me, and I told him, no deal is better than a bad deal, right? Just get up and leave next time. But you learn, right?
Yeah, but that is part of it, right? I mean, some things you can be taught. Some things, and especially the personality, some people just need to experience it in order for it to even click.
Yeah.
And it ranges all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I hope I'm that person who is like, tell me once, all right, got it. All right, tell me one more time, just in case.
Just in case, yeah.
All right, good, we're good. You mean that live wire in the water? I shouldn't step in the water. That's a good idea. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. But I mean, I have a kid, and I'm watching it happen in front of me, and the interactions with the child are so re-educational. Selfishly, I'm relearning stuff. Going, oh boy. I got to stop being so assumptive sometimes. Sometimes it's okay to be super Captain Obvious. I'm pretty Captain Obvious on a regular basis, but at the same time, I'm like, this is good. This is a life lesson in our business. Most of advisors start in this business because they want to help people and make good money. It boils down to our business starts to get a lot of people who make a lot of money, and then they forget that they got into this to start to help people. It's okay. It doesn't mean they're off the rock. It doesn't mean there's a bad thing. But they can come back to that idea of helping, right? The best way you can help is stop telling people and start asking questions. As soon as you flip the script and start asking questions, again, this is my dad moment here. The second I start asking questions, I may learn that he didn't hear me. He chose not to hear me, but he didn't hear me when I said X, Y, and Z, or he didn't understand what I meant when I said X, Y, and Z. And that is transferable to advisor. That's really transferable from advisor and consultative and being consultative. And our space needs to keep focusing on, I think our space really needs to keep focusing on how do we get better at being consultative.
Speaking of that, what are some things that you've noticed, like when you've been up in the Northeast now, when you've been in the DC area, are there any things that people tend to say up there that they think is different and is the exact same thing as there is here?
Oh, you got to help me on this one. This is gotta get, like I'm thinking like pop and Coke, right? Like that's I went more of like
similar, but like for me, what I got a kick out of is like the prices and the cost and the service in the restaurants here in the Northeast are totally different. But the costs are the same, or if not, the cost is basically the same here.
Yeah, bread is bread. Bread is bread.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you go up there, like for example, I went to a steakhouse up in the Northeast. Same 4 people. It was the same price in New York as it was here, but we know here the service and the food quality were less, right? Worse. But like everyone's, but that's because you're in New York. Well, it was the same price. So is there anything like when you're in DC, is there something that you would think is like traditionally, or they think is traditionally DC, but you're like, yeah, but no, we do the same thing in the South?
Well, actually, I'm driving. It's not the same, but it's different, and it is the same in that idea. Bad drivers are bad drivers. Just different versions of that. Some places, they never use their turn signal. You're up north in New York, if you hear a horn, you're not surprised by it. You hear a horn down here, what just happened? But at the end of the day, bad driving's bad driving. Yeah, food and restaurants are always a good idea, right? But on our business perspective, I think there's a certain, some of it's going to be your clothing, how you present yourself outwardly. What I mean by that is, when you lived in New York for a long time, the whole suits and the
I
dress.
love my suits. I don't get to wear them here.
I know, exactly.
I don't get to wear.
In fact, if you do, you know what they say? Ooh,
you don't have to
whose funeral are you going to?
Right. Yeah.
Wow, who died? I was in a practice in Arizona and outside of Tucson, and I'll never forget this. Like the first day, and he has since retired. His name was Ron. Ron would be like khakis, boat shoes, and a Hawaiian shirt, and I'm like, I show up and I'm this is what I had on any given day. And he was like, just so we're clear, in this town, you don't wear a jacket because someone's going to say, and with that, client walks in the door. By the way, walked in the door, hung out, grabbed some coffee, didn't even have a meeting.
Yeah.
Walked to the door, is like, whoa, who died? Aren't you new? Because that looks like you're new. And I'm like,
yeah, you got to know which tank you're swimming in, right?
Yeah. And
so funny. I have again, I mentioned the new advisor that started up with me, and he absolutely did not want the corporate phone number. He was like, I want a 919 number. I want to be here. I'm going to be I want a local number. I don't want to, extensions. He got one anyway. I just I just linked it to a local number near him. But it was just so funny because, again, it's just everybody has their niche.
I do think sometimes that can make a difference, right? Your area code. I know where things are. I recognize numbers like, 906 or 609, Jersey.
Jersey, yeah.
Yep. 917?
New York OG.
Yeah. I'm like, boom, done. I'm like this. But nowadays, it's a cell phone. Like, I don't know. It could be anywhere.
What about things that are the same? Like, how about advisors' personalities, same questions, same answers?
Interesting. I say that might be a good question. That might be a better question.
I've never been to the West Coast. I've never hung out over there and done any of those types of meetings where you're going out to San Francisco or anything really west of here, I guess. So I don't know any advisors that direction. I didn't know if maybe they would be the same, like here in New York and
So from my exposure, where have I lived as an advisor or in that capacity? In Tucson, Louisville, Kentucky. Yes, it's pronounced Louisville for anyone who's listening. And that's someone once smarter than me says, say Louisville with a mouthful of marbles, Louisville. Louisville, Dallas, up northeast.
Did you say that when you lived here, though? Did you call it Louisville?
No, it was Louisville.
Louisville?
It was Louisville. Well, this Louisville, that's Louisville. That's after living there, you learn real quick. The answer to your question is what's the same. The one thing is, here's what's the same everywhere, no matter where I've interacted with advisors. The good ones get to know their clients, get to know their needs. They are really consultative, and that bends the needle. It doesn't bend the needle. It snaps the needle when it comes to how their interactions are with their clients.
Okay, so on that line, talking to Sohill, this is a question for Sohill. For the generation that's never worked with an actual financial advisor, but somebody who's actually looking on Truist or looking on SoFi or working on an app, what is important about working with a financial advisor? When would they want to work with a financial advisor versus using an app?
All right. The answer to your question is
42.
37. No. What was the Rolling Rock? 33. 33 makes me thirsty. The answer to your question is it really focuses in on we all think we potentially have the discipline to do the things that are necessary when it's hard to do. By the way, anybody here go to the gym every day? You can see in 2 seconds. I don't. Part of it's time. That's bull. Where I'm going with that is apps can help automate, and that's awesome, and that's good. And apps can move the needle a lot of times. But what happens in our business, it affects the outcome of your future more than any others. The emotional decision. And when do we know? We all generally, except for the crazy people, know. When should you buy something? When should you sell something?
Buy low. There's only one way to make money. Buy low, sell high. You can do it in different orders, but there's only one way to make money. It's always the same order, yes. But point being is, when do people always lose? When they do that.
It goes down, and all of a sudden they go, I can't take this anymore. You missed your window, man. And then they lock in that. Or they go, well, it's all right. I'm gonna wait till it gets to here. I'm gonna buy it. You've lost all of the point being is, where do the interactions occur? Number one, I think you should interact with a person early and often. It doesn't mean you have to stop the apps. It simply means you should start the relationship about where am I going to. Actually, here's the line. All right. epiphany, light bulb just went off. This happens in our business.
Okay, so let's start over because this could be a good short, little micro short. Now that you've actually thought about it,
I had it. I think I might have a solve. Yes.
Okay, so talking to a younger generation that's used to using apps all the time or whatever, what would be the benefit of working with a financial advisor?
All right. You're at that point and you realize I may have something that I've started to build that's real. And my decision that I make today is going to affect today, going to affect tomorrow. But the moment that is the biggest impact is those who realize the decision I make today actually is affecting 10 years from now. And do I protect it? Or do I bolster it? Or do I tank it? And I'm at that vortex of moving in one direction or the other. I didn't realize I'm going. I'm actually thinking going, the decision I make today to buy X, sell Y, add this to the puzzle piece. People forget those are little trinkets that you may be moving, but the reality is those are actually big needles that you're moving. How does a cruise ship move? A little bit at a time. You know what they end up doing? They're going from here to there, but they got there. How do they do it? Just a little move.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's great. One of the things that I was thinking as well is that, like, I like to explain to people that when you could turn off those reminders, right? You can choose
silence your phone.
Yeah, right. But when you have somebody that's getting paid to make sure that you do things right, they're going to make you do a will. They're going to keep on you to make sure that you do the things that you should be doing for yourself. And you need to figure out what your time is worth. If you're really good at a different skill set, maybe you should try to find someone that's going to complement you or help you. And
yin and
not
yang, right?
Turn off, right? Like, how many of us don't want to think about it so we don't do it? Procrastinate.
I'll go to the gym tomorrow, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's awesome.
But at the end of the day, you're right. But every little decision isn't a little decision. That's the other part. Like, that's the analogy of the notifications being turned off in silence is a great analogy. At the end of the day, you still got to wake up in the morning and go to work. Are you going to turn off all your alarms? Are you going to wake up? That's the moment. The problem is those who figured it out, well, no. Sometimes you realize it's too late. That's really the reality of it is. It's most of the time you realize it's too late. The good news is just stop, shift gears. I had a conversation last night with a guy, and we were just talking about something, and it was the same comment, and it was like, I don't know, let's say working out. Let's go down. He's like, why can't you just start tomorrow? Just start tomorrow. Just start. Just do one day. See what happens.
Yeah, that's.
I got a text, by the way, this morning. It's like, did you start today?
Good luck out of town. That's just never.
Especially when my first breakfast was at 7 a.m. By the way, 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches. Let's go.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got so busy. Today was a crazy day. It was fun. Had to figure out whether or not. Again, these are the things that even large companies have issues with. It was actually a day. We've got tax time coming, right? So
what?
Everybody's calling about everything. But in this particular case, I'm helping a plan sponsor with a retirement plan, with a 401k plan. And this is a company that has 500 employees. And this is their third payroll provider, right? Because the paperwork, because the promises are made, but the technology doesn't work. And so moving from one vendor to another, it's not just a single individual person. It's like a legitimate chore, a legitimate heavy lift when you have to repaper people on any kind of system that's going to have all of that sensitive data, right? And doesn't matter if it's one person or 20 people or 500 people, it's still the same process. The more people, it may or may not make a difference, but generally, the more people, the bigger the heavy lift, right? The bigger the headache.
100%. Yeah, and the good news is nowadays, in most situations, technology is allowing the DocuSigns of the world, are allowing a lot of those things to be a little more efficient, but they still have to be done. There still has to be at least a go click here, please. Like until that's all done. And I'm not saying it works for everything, but
that's when you start having the problems with the cross-platform functionality, where like one person will accept DocuSign, one person won't accept anything but wet ink, and then you've got some people that require wet ink, or like it's not working together. And so like while you think it's easy, it doesn't cross platforms very well. So
that
frustrating.
Crossing streams. Yeah.
But don't worry, that's what AI is going to fix.
I thought it did.
Yeah, it's all fixed. Oh, it's good. So how painful was it? Not too bad.
Today?
Right? Not too bad.
Me? No, I'm good.
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 Well,
How was
the
I?
good news, the good news is
that
the good news we're pretty much done.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining us on Money in the Bank with Frank. We'll come out with some shorts on this, and I hope you guys join us next week. Have a great day. Hey you, thanks for joining us for another episode of Money in the Bank with Frank. If you like that, hit the subscribe button. We have plenty more content like that on the Merge TV, and we look forward to seeing you next time.